Hello ladies and gentlemen, once again this is Jeremy Smith. Today we're going to be taking a quick look at Nikon's new D5500. The D5500 is basically just a small incremental update over the D5300. Whenever I took this out of the box, I was very impressed by the way the camera feels, and I immediately noticed how light and small it is. It's almost into mirrorless camera territory as far as its weight, so that's a very good thing. I'll show you guys the camera up closer in a moment. I did also notice that they decided to remove the GPS from this one, and that doesn't surprise me looking at cameras like the 5300 and AW1 that I've tested. The GPS is nice to have in certain situations, but I found that the battery life really suffers whenever you turn on GPS, so I don't consider it a bad thing at all that the GPS is removed from this camera. And I would say probably only 10% of camera buyers, at least out of the camera buyers I've seen, only about 10% actually care about GPS. So I'm not surprised to see that removed from this model. They did add a touchscreen to this camera as well, which is nice to have. But the biggest thing about this camera that aside from the size I've noticed, is that the processing just continues to improve. This camera still shoots at 5 frames a second like the D5300, and it still has the same 39-point autofocus system. But even with those similarities, the newer processing tech seems to allow this camera to shoot a little bit faster. It's one of those things, it's not something that you can quantify in the specs necessarily, but I did find this camera to be a lot more responsive than the 5300. So this entry-level camera segment is kind of growing up, and it feels a lot more like a camera like the 7100 or 750 in the way it performs and shoots. We'll go ahead and take a closer look at the camera now, and I will be giving you guys some sample photos to look at very soon, but I'm thinking I'm going to wait until we have all the latest RAW converter updates and everything, and I'll probably be doing a little bit of a comparison with this camera and the 5300 in terms of image quality, because I kind of want to see how they compare. Because as I mentioned before, this is just an incremental update. It's not a really big update. So I want to see how this camera compares to the 5300 image quality wise. But for now, we'll go ahead and take a closer look at the camera. Taking a closer look at this camera, you guys can realize that it's very small in size. Basically, they took a lot of design cues from the D750 and they made this much smaller and much thinner. So you can see very thin frame here. And that also gives it a very large grip, just like it does on the D750, which is nice. A lot of people, especially people with larger hands, have kind of complained about the entry-level DSLRs in the past, any of the 3000 and 5000 series cameras. And if you have a larger hand, you never really had very much to hold on to, but now, with this deeper grip and thinner body, it's much easier to hold on to it. But I feel like those with smaller hands will still be comfortable as well. If we take a look up here, I thought it was interesting that we've got a black shutter release button. Nikon used to just do that on their higher cameras. Now they seem to be doing it on all of them. I have this camera in full manual right now, and you can notice that I can go down to our touchscreen, and I can change things here and our info to screen. It's all very similar. The touchscreen is really responsive. Now, this is something that we'll have to wait until we have this camera available, but a lot of people are going to no doubt wonder how this compares to the T5i. And I can tell you right now that the T5i is still going to have an advantage when it comes to video because of the STM focus motor and dual pixel AF technology. This camera isn't bad. You can have it focus on a certain spot, and in video mode it does continuously focus. But once again, we're still using contrast detect for live view and for video mode on Nikon. So it's not going to be quite as fast as the Canon system. So yes, the Canon T5, the new, not T5i, but the new T6 that's come out. They have a T6i and T6s, and both of those should have an advantage in terms of video autofocus, but of course we will be looking at that in the future. But that is something I'll point out to you guys. So before you ask me in the comments how this compares to the new Canon, I can say definitely it will have an advantage in video And I expect both cameras to be pretty evenly matched in stills, but once again, when I get a T6 series camera in my hands, we will be taking a look. We have the same battery down here as the previous Nikons in this range, like the D3300 and D5300. On this particular camera, we do have better battery life. Actually, the battery life numbers are huge, hugely different compared to the 5300. On this camera, you're going to get about 800 shots per charge, while you were around 500 on the 5300. Once again, no doubt, probably the result of different processing technology. If we take a look, let's see, if we take a look at the menus here, I noticed a few little small differences whenever I was going through here. And of course, I'll be looking through this even more, and I will probably find other differences too. I thought it was interesting that on this, in our custom functions, there is an option for date stamp. And I can't remember if that's something that's in the 5300 or not, but I do know that it's something that hasn't been in previous Nikon cameras in this range, so I thought that was interesting. They also decided to move the option to turn the beep on and off. They decided to put that over here. Let's see, they put it over here in the setup menu instead of the custom functions. I thought that was kind of interesting too. So you can also, of course, turn the touchscreen display on and off. But really, all the main functions are pretty much the same. There's lots of aesthetic differences, as you guys can tell, but we pretty much have the same sorts of controls. This camera does have a little bit different ISO range. It's 100 to like 25,600 instead of 100 to 12,800. This camera appears to have the same sensor. The sensor has the exact same specs except for the ISO range. So it wouldn't surprise me if the different ISO range is the result of the result of software tweaks and not the result of an actual sensor change. But in the coming weeks, we should know more information about that. And of course, we will be testing this camera side by side with the D5300 to see how they compare in terms of image quality. For the time being, if you guys have any questions, just let me know. With the cost difference between this camera and the 5300, the 5300 is going for about $699 USD for the body right now. This camera is going for $899 USD for the body. For the cost difference, I would almost rather just buy the 5300 and buy another nice lens to go with it, like something like a 35-1.8 or 50-1.8, and use that cost difference for the lens and not for the bodies. But if you do want to have the absolute latest and greatest, and you really like the small size and lighter weight, which really, in my opinion, is probably going to be the biggest thing about this camera, that along with the touchscreen. If you really like those features, definitely look at this model. Otherwise, I'd say stick with the 5300. If you guys want even more information about how both those compare, be sure to subscribe, because I will be posting a video comparing this one to the 5300 very soon. Until next time, this is Jeremy Smith, signing off.